want to not be on my. I can't really sleep, but did I miss?
Like, share,
Extra.
Hi guys! So welcome to another episode. It's me, your girl, Fareedah. And I'm super duper excited to be here today. So today we're essentially going to be talking about career and what career path I took and how I got here, like what my goal was, what my aspirations were, and basically my journey to getting to this point. So backstory, let's take a little bit of a back tumble to the very beginning. I'm going to talk about my own journey and give tips and tricks on things that you can do to basically make your journey successful or better than what it already is. So essentially, I'm going to start from the very, very beginning. So when I was a child, obviously, like I said in my previous video, I was born and raised in Nigeria, and I was pretty much like a science student in secondary school. I did biology, chemistry, physics, and the likes. Started with integrated sciences in junior secondary school, and then senior secondary school. Like I said, I did biology, physics, chemistry, and I was pretty average. I don't think I was the best at it, but I got good grades. I was very hardworking, dedicated, all that jazz. I was smart, all that good stuff. And the way it is in Nigeria, pretty much, obviously, as some of you might be aware of, you go straight into like Nigeria and people who use typically European standard of education usually go straight into medical school, which is usually 5 to 6 years depending on where in the world you are. And so the Nigerian system at the time, well, not at the time, still really right now, it's 6 years of medical school, and then you learn basic sciences in the beginning, and then actual hardcore anatomy and all those things all together wrapped in one. But fortunately, I ended up coming to America for school, and in the American educational system, you have to do 4 years of an undergraduate degree. It could be anything. It could be science related. It could be non-science related. And from that process, from that journey, however many gap years you take in between your undergraduate degree and the graduate school, which is medical school, then you typically go that route. So if you haven't clocked it already, I was my plan was obviously to become a medical doctor. But obviously that did not work out. I'm gonna give that backstory a little bit and make it quick and summarize. But essentially, like I said, my goal, because I grew up in Nigeria, I was a science student, so the goal was always to do medical school. And since I was obviously opportune to come to America for my schooling, for my university, I decided, okay, I'll do 4 years of undergrad and do 4 years of medical school. So like I said, I'm gonna tell my own story of going to school in Nigeria. So for those of you that don't actually know, secondary school is basically part of middle school and then combined with high school as well. So it's essentially from grade 7 to grade 12. Yeah. So basically, as I was saying, my long spiel or long story, I went to secondary school, high school in Nigeria, and I was a science student, and my plan was to do medical school in America. I actually had an uncle who went to the school that I ended up graduating from university from here in America, in Philadelphia, actually. And so my journey, my journey essentially started when I was about 16 years old. I was an undergrad. I decided to choose biology based on my uncle's recommendation, really, because my uncle is actually a medical doctor here in America. And based on his recommendation, I chose biology as my undergraduate degree, which honestly, looking back, I feel like I might have had more success doing a different major, which I will talk about separately. But like I said, I was a biology major. I got pretty good grades, actually. I wasn't bad at it, but biology was not my best subject. I'm not even going to come and lie about it. It wasn't my best subject, but like I said, my goal in life was obviously to become a medical doctor. I didn't hate it at all, but because like I said, my goal was to become a medical doctor in America, I decided I would do biology because I would learn all the courses that I needed for medical school, for the medical college admissions test, also known as the MCAT, to get into medical school. So that was the goal. So essentially, I did my 4 years of undergraduate degree, did my MCAT 2 times while I was in undergrad. 2 times. Actually, I did it the first time while I was still in undergrad, and the second time right after I graduated from my undergraduate degree. Unfortunately, as luck, God, fortune, destiny would have it, I did not do well both times. Like it wasn't like my score wasn't abysmal or anything like that. And for a backstory, the MCAT scoring system is from 472 right now to 528, and around the middle point is like 500, which is around what I did score. Which wasn't like the worst thing at all. But being obviously an international student in America, the odds were really just not in my favor. So along the line, I was like, okay, you know what? Because I need to like boost up my application, I decided, okay, you know what? I will get a. So I worked for a bit. I got a master's degree in clinical research, and then I decided, okay, I would try again, and then do medical school. So I tried again and did medical school. It didn't work out again. I was like, okay, you know what? I think it's time for me to decide and figure out what are the career alternatives that I could, journey into, or like, kind of follow through at that point in time. So that was how I came into the field of clinical research, which I currently work in right now. And I honestly would say, like, for me, clinical research has been like a blessing in my own life. I mean, obviously, I was fortunate enough to have career advice from friends and family members who were like, oh, do this instead. This isn't working out, so maybe you should try this. And that's kind of how my own spiel kind of went into it. So essentially, I got a master's degree in clinical research from the almighty Icahn School of Medicine, Mount Sinai in New York. So like I said, I went to Icahn School of Medicine for my master's degree in clinical research. It was also called like a master's in medical sciences as well. And then after that, I've been working as a clinical research coordinator since then. Essentially, my goal was actually to work as a clinical research associate, but that didn't really work out. And because I knew I had some research assistant experience, so I was like, okay, CRC is really the next best thing, and so that's what I ended up doing. But really, for me, the goal is still to do like more associate type study monitor roles, which I will really go into like in the next couple of minutes. As I was saying, so after I did my graduate degree, started working as a clinical research coordinator, and since then, I started like my research career actually at University of Pennsylvania back in Philadelphia. I worked there as a clinical operations assistant before I went for my master's degree in New York. And essentially, as I was saying, like that was like my first inkling into clinical research. Like I said, the medical school route wasn't really working out for me, and I wanted to do something else that I felt like would be fulfilling, and I like clinical research. And it was straightforward enough that I could understand it. I knew I could do the tasks, and I just kind of went right into it. So essentially, like obviously, my story was not it didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to, but all hope was not lost because, like I said, I was fortunate enough to have advice to do my research and try and figure out, okay, what next to do, what can I do. Aside from that, while I was actually still in my master's degree, I took the MCAT one more time and applied to medical school while I was in my master's program. And then after I didn't get in, then that was when I decided, you know what, enough is enough. I spent a lot of time, resources, energy, and effort doing this one thing that obviously has not worked out for me. That being said, I can still talk about like things like tips and tricks that I think people should do if they're trying to get into medical school, what I think would have helped my own application, but that's not what we're doing today. So right now, this is the part where I segue into like actual clinical research. Before I start, I'm going to put a huge quick disclaimer. You do not need a master's degree in clinical research to go into the clinical research field. You don't even need a bachelor's degree in biology to go into the field of clinical research. You can do a business degree, you can do an architecture, you can do any degree really almost. It does help to have the science knowledge and background to go into clinical research, but you don't have to do that. Like I said, you could have done chemistry, physics, psychology. Psychology is actually one of another good majors for people who don't really want to do like heavy sciences like physics, chemistry, and really still want to go into clinical research. Because in clinical research, a lot of times you tend to work with people, especially as a CRC, which is a clinical research coordinator that I work as. And so if you want to go into clinical research, psychology is a really good degree. And honestly, for me, I know looking back, if I had done a psychology degree and a biology minor, I would have been fine regardless. But that being said, like I said, my route was through my master's in clinical research degree, or medical sciences as it was called, and then I started my journey. So when I started my journey really in psychiatry. I fell in love with psychiatry, and even while I was on medical school route, I decided that I wanted to do psychiatry. And I'll tell you the backstory about that psychiatry knowledge, like in another video, another day, but not today. So essentially with psychiatry, you tend to work with people with different types of disorders. So because I was a biology major and a psychology minor, I kind of combined like those different things to be able to learn about, the psyche and the mind of people, mental illnesses, mental disorders, mental health, mental well-being. And so with that, I said I started working specifically under psychiatry. I started working in addiction medicine. And what that means is I was working with people who had some, who had used substances or who abused substances. So using and abusing, obviously, as you may or may not know, are different. Using it, and before something starts to learn to become like a disorder, it has to affect your functioning or your well-being. So for instance, I could use alcohol every single day, right? And for whatever reason, it's not I'm functioning okay, I'm functioning fine, I'm able to do all my tasks, and it doesn't affect anything. Then at that point, I'm not addicted to alcohol. I'm not a substance. I mean, I'm abusing it, but technically, I do not have a mental disorder at that point. Because for something to be classified as a mental disorder, it has to affect your well-being and things like your work and things of that nature. So essentially, I was working with people that had substance abuse, specifically methamphetamines, heroin, and other opioids. So I did that for close to 2 years while I was in my master's program. I worked in a lab that used to work with people. So we did some sort of research. After that research process, then I started working in rare diseases or rare disorders. Fun fact, there are over 7,000 rare diseases in the world. And the reason why they're called rare diseases in America, they're classified as rare diseases if fewer than 200,000 people in the country are affected by those illnesses. That's what's classified as a rare disease. So I worked previously in a disease called Niemann-Pick's disorder, which I will not go into, which is a metabolic disease that affects people that have a deficient enzyme called acid-sphingomyelinase, and through that they're not able to make ASM, and so basically they are not able to digest certain things, and so that causes lipid buildup in their body. So I did that for a few years, close to 2 years as well. And after I did that, I started working in sickle cell. Sickle cell was near and dear to my heart because being a Nigerian and coming from the African population, people who grew up from that background are pretty familiar with sickle cell disease. And because, like I said, for me, it was all about impacting change in the world, I decided to go into sickle cell, and I've been working there for about a year now. Essentially, so that's my whole spiel. And so I work with different patient populations, from Hispanic to Black people to white people to people of different, like various cultural backgrounds in the different years that I've been in clinical research. I've been in research for about 5 years now, and I also have various qualifications as well. As I mentioned, I have my degrees, but apart from my degrees, I have something called a SOCRA certificate. So I am a certified clinical research professional, and that certificate is valid for 3 years. So, as I mentioned, I am a certified clinical research professional under the Society of Clinical Research Associates, or SOCRA. While there is SOCRA, there's also ACRP. ACRP stands for Association of Clinical Research Professionals. The SOCRA certificate, which I have, is actually valid for 3 years. ACRP is only valid for 2 years. But the SOCRA certificate, a lot of people who are usually in academia settings usually use SOCRA, and even people in industry use SOCRA as well. But also people who ACRP, a lot of people who are in industry have ACRP certifications. For both certifications, you do require a certain number of years to be in the clinical research industry, and they actually run you, like if you have, for instance, it's clinical research degree, which I have, and you have for the SOCRA certification, it was over 1,700 hours of being in the field, then you would qualify, or close to 2 years, then you'd qualify to get the SOCRA certificate. And then ACRP has different regulations, which I don't necessarily know all of. But so I really just want to wrap this up quickly. Essentially, clinical research is a booming field. So for people who are trying to do medicine or do medical sciences and feel like, oh, like I don't want to do medical school, what are my other options? It's definitely an option for you, something to consider, something that I had to consider because I really didn't even have a fallback option. For me, it was just medical school or nothing. And because, like I said, I was fortunate enough to have people around me to give me some sort of advice, and I like clinical research, and I thought it was something I could do long term. So I kind of fell into it. There's so many different options within the clinical research field. There's people who have PhDs, people who have MDs, and people who have different qualifications, nurses, other scientists, lab technicians, and what have you. So there's so many different opportunities. Definitely something to consider, and something that a lot of people find very interesting and feeling you're still making an impact in people's lives. You don't have to perform the surgeries, you don't have to administer the medications. There's pharmacists, there's so many people within the clinical research field who are making things work, who are changing people's lives daily, and it's awesome and it's almost fulfilling. So if that's something you're interested interested in, feel free to message me privately. My email is very visible. You can email me. I promise I'll respond. You can drop a comment. I will hopefully reply as soon as possible. My dear, there's so many options for you. So like, don't ever feel like you're locked into one career path, and people change their careers all the time. I'm very happy to serve as a resource for people who are really interested or who want to get into this field. And really, with life, there's no guarantees. Tomorrow, I might not be in clinical research, but the vast of knowledge and experience that I've acquired over the couple of years still remain mine. Nobody can take that away from me unless I'm dead or I lose my mind or something like that. But essentially, my experiences and mine, nobody can take that away from me. So I'm happy to serve as a resource for people who are interested, who are looking to go into it, and who have questions or comments. Feel free to subscribe, like, let me know if you want more content about clinical research. I'm actually thinking of doing a part 2 to give more information about this because I'm truly passionate about this. I'm truly passionate about making people's lives better than it was before, and like improving the quality of people's lives. So thank you, and thanks for coming to my quick TED Talk. Bye!